Hey everybody, and welcome to Man on a Motorcycle. I am literally on my motorcycle today. Finally. No, it's actually going to stay, and I've been out riding. So, just finished a book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's written by Viktor Frankl. And he was a Holocaust survivor. Served like 3, almost 4 years in concentration camps. But he was also a psychiatrist, psychoanalysis, and he discovered a lot of things while he was in these camps. And what he talked about a lot was living a second life, And I found it interesting because he is, of course he's Jewish, but he is quite spiritual, and it kept just resonating in my mind that there's always that second life, Look at all the players, all the lead stories that you see. There's always a second life involved. Even Jesus says something about, you have to be born again, first from the flesh and then in the spirit. And I think that's how, you get to a certain point in your life where you decide that it's time to become born of the Spirit. And because, like Viktor Frankl was saying, is there's this thing called the existential vacuum, where we're sucked into trying to be accepted into society and having this being more to where we're conforming to things that we wouldn't typically agree on. But once we decide, and what I'm talking about is like your youth and doing stupid stuff, and of course us men, we were, I didn't grow up until I was about 45, so I'm new to this second life stuff. But there becomes this point where you decide to be a different person, and you're born of the Spirit now. You start seeing the wonderful things that God has given you in your life, and the things that He continues to give you. And I think that's where that vacuum starts kind of closing down a little bit, and you don't consider yourself and with others' opinions, if that makes sense. And I think, if you look at all the characters of like the Old Testament stuff, Abraham had to leave his land, his original home, to carry on God's work, and so he had to become someone else. Jacob wrestled with God, and afterwards became who he needed to be. All in all, what I'm saying, I guess, is that sometimes it feels like we have to be able to not conform to this life just so we can become something else. Back when I was lifting weights a lot, you couldn't, it was always in the back of my mind, I couldn't be what I wanted to be or grow into a certain weight if I wasn't ready to advance into that. You can't be something that you've never been if you've never gone as far as you wanted to go. Does that make sense? And so Viktor Frankl continues to talk about how, what's the meaning of life? Well, he says there's different circumstances for everything, and for everyone there's a different meaning for your life. And I think what he's talking about, and he basically says it, he says, you know, a meaningful life is living a life of meaning. So I think that's when it comes to being born of the Spirit. Then you decide, hey, it's time to be meaningful. Start adding to society and start giving back. I don't like giving back because it sounds like you stole something, but start giving yourself and start changing your environment. And I think that's some of the things that he touched on. There's so many other things in that book, and I totally recommend it if you're into like the psychological part of things that can help you change your mindset as well. But just know that it always seems like there's a second life there for you. God's prepared you for a second life. I know he's prepared me for a second life. I've probably lived about 3 or 4 lives by now. I almost feel like a cat with 9 lives. But yeah, it seems like that God will set you up in one life to prepare you for the next life. So pay attention to what you're doing. Live intentionally. That's another thing from Viktor Frankl. Live intentionally and pay attention to what God's trying to teach you, because get ready. There's a second life coming, and it's going to be much better than the one you're in now. But you have to go through this one to get to that one. He talks about that. There's always going to be an achievement or the upside to suffering. So if there's something like that that's weighing you down, or life's really rough right now, just remember this is field training. Just like Moses killed an Egyptian, and he was sent out to the wilderness for 40 years. Well, guess what Moses did when he returned and got his kids, the Israelites, out of Egypt? He spent 40 years in the desert, in the wilderness. Wonder if that was field training. Anyway, live with some intention. Don't get stuck into the I can't even say it now, the vacuum. And, look for that second life, because it's coming. It's coming soon. Hang in there. Let God allow God to give you that field training, that 40 years in the desert, because you really need it for the next step. We talk about it all the time with me and the people in my youth group in the morning. You can't allow new wine in old wineskins. So grow, get new, change yourself, become the person that God needs you to be to make a difference in this world. Love ya. Bye.